So, whenever you're ready, this is the discussion I wanted to have with you tonight. Um, the idea of science and religion. When I met up with a philosophical discussion with my kids yesterday, we had an open discussion about religion, culture, tradition, different paths regarding faith, and science came up, as science always does come up. And then the question then became, if you're religious, do you still believe in science, or do you only believe in parts in science, or is there some kind of way that we can intertwine both? And my students who are Muslim said that, like, we believe in the Quran because it has also been scientifically proven, and things have been discovered in the Quran far beyond, way before scientists had discovered in the modern age. And I haven't, I'm still delving into Islam, so I have no stance here. But I kind of just wanted your perspective on it. What do you think? Like, do you think like there isn't that these two are intertwined? Do you think they remain separate, or are they in conflict, or can they be merged? Religion and science.
This is a very significant question
Yeah.
these days because worlds are coming together. And I mean here not only sort of the globalization that's happening and allowing us to occupy separately yet in the same space, and not only that in the physical sense, but also different disciplines, areas of studies that have been going on for a while are overhearing each other and then slowly interchanging a few thoughts, and then you might say a kind of engaging and debating
Yeah.
and raising significant questions on that. So in many ways then it's a part of the kind of journey, the human journey that is unfolding. It used to be science and religion were together.
Exactly.
There was no sense of saying this is religious, this is scientific, this is godly, this is secular, this is, but it emerged in time for various reasons. So the so-called religious, what used to be called sacred, and the so-called mundane, what later became secular, started slowly going their ways.
Yeah.
And in many ways, science had to, so-called science now in the separate sort of separation from the religious or sacred and so on, had to find its way to establish itself, to self-understand. And it took a while. Let's just take chemistry, for example.
Yeah.
There were groups of people who understood the interconnectedness of existence and the ability for energies and forces to correspond, to relate, to speak to each other, and that they were called alchemists. I'm just quickly generalizing here for you.
Sure.
And they were the scientists of the time. They had deep understanding of the workings of metals, of various processes to bring about results and to, you might say, predict and guide and so on. But in the separation that happened, slowly there were groups of people who were saying there are so many assumptions, so many unproven statements that are here. Let us start working with simple assumptions and focus on the experimentation, focus on the publicly demonstrable outcomes. And of course, then that's the history of chemistry. Slowly, it separated itself. and started claiming alchemy is superstition and so on. And alchemists would say this, the chemists are just superficial, tiny little results, a few little things here and there. But eventually, because of the collective interest in this differentiation that started out not only in chemistry, but also, and I'm going to jump, in politics. It was so easy to claim that power was a bestowed thing. It was it's a cosmic happening. It was endowed, and there were those who were chosen to do the leading. This is a theocratic understanding of the emergence. And this has been going on for years, from ancient Egypt, the pharaohs, all the way into the medieval period, and so on. But slowly, there was a kind of loosening of the contact of the governance from the supernatural and the sacred. And I'm just slowing that out to you to show the context within which the emergence of this question is raising. And we can really go on because it's a vast topic.
I know.
Yeah. So to come back to your question quickly and simply to answer, it depends on the consciousness that raises this question. There is a real sense in which, yes, they are separate and divided. And there is a real sense in which they are intertwined and one. And to explain that means to engage the consciousness that is bringing this question. So to just say if it's an individual, most likely he or she is in these two worlds, the church world or the mosque world or the temple world, or whatever he or she has gone to experience the religious. And then the schools and the laboratories and where this person has experienced science. And as we said, these are historically situated. And the now of this is one of, they have distinct discourses, distinct way of talking about the universe and life. And this young person who asked this question is now, you might say, torn and asking, are they related? Are they separate? Do they make sense to each other? And in many ways, it is the journey of this person, this consciousness, and it is a right question to ask, and it will involve quite a few unfolding and working out to arrive at you might say, at a resolution or answering of this question. Now, within this is an individual, within the collective journey of the human, which we should not forget, we started with globalization. We are even at you might say, at a stage, I don't know what word to use, prior to the individual who goes to the mosque or the temple or church and goes to the laboratory. We are at a point where lots of people do not even have that option. It is given to them. It is a granted thing. In other words, the individuals have an experience that is palpable. They have the experience of the laboratory. They have the experience of but in the majority tackling this have yet to really have experienced these things. And so they get things as givens. Do you see? And so this is to really come back to the question. The issue you raised is specific to the conscious level. And so there is a real sense in which on the collective level, this is very difficult question. It will take time. On the level of the individual, it is a little easier. These two options that I mentioned needed, for example, right now, I make sure that things are safe and secure enough for you to have the young folks to rest and for you to plan and so on. We do different things.
Yeah.
but we're in the same place. And there is no sense of division and or separation or a kind of fighting about it.
Yeah, yeah.
We are working collectively, and it's understood. And I am supposed to do this, and you're supposed to do that. The person in the kitchen is doing this, and the person who is setting up the tables is doing this. They are one. And so separation and intertwinement do not even arise as a question. They work together, but they are also separate. And, so there is a real sense that the younger person could arrive at this issue a quicker way than the collective. So I am trying to answer this because the question really is a question about the human journey. The human journey is a question of individuals and also the collective. On the individual level, I'm saying it's more light and greater resolution can arrive because of it's simpler, easier. On the collective, yet to be. There are so many issues to have been brought, and why not? It is like running the marathon. The whole group of the marathon of 10,000 people running will take long time before the final line is crossed. But for individuals, it might just take 1 hour and 2 hours the most. Do you see? So each individual will have their own way of negotiating this large, slow process of the collective. They can negotiate that process further through their practice, through their training, and they could say, I'm done after 3-hour marathon, I'm heading out, and they can plan. But the collective cannot do that. It will take a while. I don't know if I am approximating to you both the deeper nature of the collective journey and the necessity of this question arising, and also how it is that, in fact, on the individual level, we can go deeper and bring up the question. So would you like to ask this question on that level? So assuming that we have a consciousness that is one of the young people here sitting and listening to us.
I would say this, to add on to what you're saying, and then from there we're going to see how we branch off from there. I would say one of the quotes I gave my kids yesterday is, it's one of my favorite quotes. It says, doubt is the beginning, not the end of wisdom. And that quote has always hit me. And I feel like, to go back to what we were talking about, it applies both to science and to religion. So I see much more of an intertwining. Now, when you're talking about how do we engage with that in a healthy manner, and I think the reason why it's easier for the individual to engage with science and religion and intertwining the two and finding the middle ground and seeing where they intersect is because the individuals are much easier to doubt themselves.
Yes.
Without the pressure of the collective,
Yes.
So I would make the argument, and please correct me if you see differently, that in order to really come to this level of consciousness, the individual must separate itself from the collective. It is not a collective journey. And maybe this individual can be somebody like Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, or any of the other teachers we've had, Krishnamurti, people like that who can maybe inspire other people to take this journey. But it first requires you to separate yourself from the collective, because it's so hard to get a collective to doubt itself. Because once people put themselves in collective, there's another really good quote I like that says, if everybody's thinking the same thing, nobody's really thinking, So once everybody has already formed a collective, there is no room for nuance, because it's like, okay, we all agree on this. This is what we're going to do. And there's this emotional arrogance that pushes people forward. I mean, not to stray too far off topic, but we see it happen in politics all the time. The rave and the rage or passion people might feel for a certain politician, it completely blinds them to the flaws of that human being. I would say we as people who are seeking to be on a higher path and have a deeper level of consciousness, we are hoping to not fall into that trap. So we must separate ourselves from society and doubt ourselves constantly. And to go back to what you're saying about being in a global environment and to be in this new space, I was saying this to my kids yesterday, that whatever it is that you believe, you need to test it. So, like, if I'm saying that, I believe in Christianity, let me go to a Muslim mosque and see that experience. Let me test my Christian faith. If I'm saying I'm Muslim, let me go to an atheist and test that, Islamic faith. Let me test it. Then I get to see if it really stands the truth by fire, trial by fire, so to say.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's my thoughts.
Yes. What you're doing is you're taking on this young person who's listening to us
Yeah.
right here, and you are in many ways are challenging this person to do the workout
Yeah.
that is needed. And I will say there's a little assumption here that
Yeah.
you have that person can do it.
True.
There is the assumption that that person has the uh, deep identity formation that distinguishes him from the other, which could be the parents, the culture, and what have you. But it is very possible that person's identity is highly integrated and intertwined with the culture and the family and the setup of his environment. At which point then some of your thoughts are more for the select, the few. And I want to affirm what you're saying
Yeah.
in this way.
Yeah.
I would say this will not be resolved so easily with a few statements and one night conversation.
Not at
It's
all.
a workout.
Yeah.
And once the idea of a kind of gym, and if we like, or the track,
Yeah.
or one of those comes, readily for us, then I think we're back to the marathon group, the
Right.
collective. The collective itself became a collective by a few individuals that long time ago were out as crazies,
Oh yeah.
jogging and going,
Yeah.
and not only for 1 mile but 5 miles, and not only 5 but 10 miles, not only that for half a marathon and beyond. Slowly these started coming together, and in a little way your own work, here you are talking to one person, but you have a certain sense of wanting to increase this conversation into, and you were so happy when a whole group of people came to do the conversation.
Yeah.
Do you see now a collective was forming, and you were happy to have seen that conversation being easily generated and pursued
Yeah.
by the collective? So I wanted to come back to say a collective emerging out of a few dedicated ones you were mentioning earlier, the leaders in the religious sense of the human journey. Indeed, in their own journey, they were considered sort of suspect or exceptionals and way out there. But their dedication was one where I might be early in the taking on of this journey, but you too are bound to follow. You will just be a little later than me, and my own experience will show you how you can too join what I or these select few are doing. So I just wanted to bring you to say the doubt issue, and or the, in the language of science, experimentation, trying, testing, going over a series of procedures is really also in the religious sphere. You might say the believer or the convert, it makes steps that are as experimental as the scientist who puts the pieces of the elements or the what do you call the instruments of science, and wondering, will it explode? Will anything happen? Yeah, what are my risk factors, and so on. The same thing with what was the believers, the one who sets out into the unknown. The scientist also sets out with his or her hypothesis.
Yeah.
It's assumption. It's
Yeah.
just simply a projected image.
Mm.
If you mix this and this and this, after a series of temperature or time and or settling down, this will come about. And he or she has this in the image, and many of them wishing, please, please, become what I have. The hypothesis says, and nudging all of the instrument. And of course, when he's disappointed or it doesn't happen, that's also part of the science. And so he or she reconfigures his hypothesis
Yeah.
and writes up the outcome as part of the journey. Now, it just happens that in the religious phase, the experimentation aspect, the trying, the testing, is not a well described
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
It's only known among the practitioners. The
Mm.
practitioners know, but it's such complicated, such delicate stuff that it's generalized and said, just do this, this, this.
Yeah.
So there is a real sense in which what you said about they overlap, they work together, is part of consciousness's engagement
Mm.
with that. All right. When consciousness engages with that, you might say existence, being, the happening, there is always a space of a gap.
Mm.
And this gap is filled by a series of what have you, imaginings, a series of emotional feelings, a series of intentions, determinations, a series of, and these can be reciprocated and or shown to be needing revision.
Mm.
And this is what's called practice. And so you understand, just like the scientist with his assumptions and hypotheses and so on finds out it doesn't work, he, as a good scientist, would not be disappointed. He just says it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the heritage of science.
Mm.
And he or she sets up another series of hypotheses to arrive at a presumed wanted outcome.
Yeah.
And that is a little bit what distinguishes the sciences from the religious. The wanted outcome that the scientist
Oh, wow.
goes for
Yeah.
are pragmatic, immediate need, helpful, you might say down to earth, nitty gritty results.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
The outcomes that the religious is aiming for, and it is, you might say, at its deep level, is a kind of being,
Mm.
a kind of state, a kind that is significantly of a different kind than the ordinary.
Mm.
This is precisely why the religious makes a claim. It says the ordinary is okay and it's part of it, but it is included in, it's enveloped, it's framed by higher, deeper, farther states of being. With a scientist, it is really need to take care of a series of issues that arose. If you are in the medical sciences, there is a disease.
Yeah.
If you are in the political sciences, there is an issue of governance. If you are in the policy sciences, it is about decision making and choosing and implementing. If you are in the economic sciences, it's about effectiveness and efficiency and resource allocations that bring. So it is in many ways the sciences are working with predetermined outcomes,
Yeah.
states.
Mm.
The religious works with a loose and very, very delicate and difficult to formulate outcomes.
Mm.
But of course, in the religious, you can also do a kind of bargaining with God. I will pray, you deliver the result.
Yeah.
I am going to go to church and fast for so many days, and you heal my body,
Yeah.
and so on. And yet there is a real sense in which when that happens, one senses that it's out of a certain kind of weakness and or a way of relating that should really be of a higher grade than this exchange between that and our needs. The sciences that do something like the religious have place also, but they are considered outliers. These are the theoretical astrophysicists,
Yeah.
theoretical statisticians, theoretical biologists. In other words, those are the ones who do not necessarily work with immediate outcomes, but the outlying frame that makes possible chemistry, biology, physics, and all of economics and so on. The practical down to earth practitioners of the sciences look at these sciences as a little bit on the fringe. They just come up with these mind produced models and systems not tested. And so the dialogue between these two can be separated, a little bit like what you were asking about between religion and science. The very same physicists next door to each other do not necessarily dialogue because they come from different assumptions, different frames. As the theoretician might think of this physicist as just tackling tiny little issue about cosmology, whereas the one who does the practical, experimental with telescope and so on might consider this just simply dreamer.
Yeah, yeah. I want to touch on the idea of the conversations had around the I would say the material world, which is science, and the immaterial world, which is religion, to put it very broadly, And I think the reason why it's so hard, you had mentioned the fact that it's so difficult to describe like religious experiences because like they are so subjective.
Yes.
Like there are people who you can resonate with them to a certain degree.
Yes.
Like, the students here had really inspired me, the Muslim students, very disciplined, respectful, and I was so inspired by their faith that I wanted to, I went to the mosque several times, and I went to the mosque twice, and I had a complete breakdown there, completely broken cry. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. It was like spiritually awakening,
Yes.
There are no words I can possibly use to describe that to somebody, but those who have had that experience can say, I can resonate with that. I feel that because they've done that in a Buddhist temple or Christian church,
Yes.
However, when we're talking about the material world, like this is so common for us. I can tell you how this book looks, the color of it, how thick it is, and you can touch it. So I think that's what causes this disconnect in many ways. And at the same time, I think what would be great as we talk about, progressing in the spiritual journey, is trying to find a way to merge this. Because in many ways, there's a lot of ways where this overlaps. And one way is, I remember reading about this man who, he would read facial expressions. And he used to help like the FBI to notice facial expressions and stuff like that. And he had an entire science behind it. I think his name was Lehman Group or something like that. But I say all that to say that like for many people, there's a scientific approach where they can be like, because this person did this with their upper lip and they winked this way or they squinted their eyes this way, this expresses this anger. Scientific, I guess if you can look through 7,000 different images, you might be able to recognize a pattern. Yet there are some people who are so spiritually in tune, they can just meet somebody and be like, wow, this is a hurting soul, and can immediately connect with them. And they probably can't read past the 6th or 7th grade level. So there's something there that I find is so beneficial in the spiritual world, but us living in this very secular global environment where everything needs to be material and presented by numbers. Numbers can't measure everything, numbers. I remember we were doing a sociology project in my master's degree, and they asked in one of the research questions, they're asking people, to rate how faithful you are. And I was like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you do that when they found different ways of doing that? How often do you go to church? How often do you pray?
Yeah.
How often? And I'm looking at that like, what? Like, I have a friend who's a Buddhist who's very spiritually in tune. He's gone to the temple maybe once in the past 3 or 4 years, but that's not his thing. But it doesn't make him any less spiritual or religious. So I'm saying all this to say that I find it very unfortunate that the languages are so divided, as you had mentioned before. And I think that there's a great benefit in finding a commonality, some kind of middle ground. Because when we're talking about life in biology and understanding that, it's no different than the life that we'll be talking about when we talk about how life is created in the Bible or in the Quran. So I feel like there could be a merge there.
Yes, in your sort of aspiration, I sense the sort of the yearning to bring together disparate, separate worlds into a certain togetherness, unity, oneness, and so on.
Yes.
And so, if you grant, and there is a real sense in which that is indeed at this point in our journey, a critical and significant state to aspire for, aim for, and so on. But having agreed there, I want to go step a little bit to say, so this yearning of ours, including mine, in sharing this with you, has to also loosen itself a little bit and say, well, if the state of things are so, why do we yet see this conflict, this division, this state of separateness, this and in the way that we at a deep level feel, something that relaxes in us ought to say that too is part of it.
Beautiful, yeah.
And that sense of loosening and relaxing might help us to see what you were earlier mentioning, the inner connectedness, yet the yet to be achieved outer oneness. In other words, something obviously connects us. Earlier, you remember, we agreed easily and you might say flowingly that I take care of the place being secure and safe and relaxing, and you take care of all the other things. And there's this division of labor was no issue for us to bring up the issue of, oh, you are separate, you're different. No, we just said, oh yeah, that serves our unity. So coming back then to your question, I think there is a sense in which the unity has to work itself through the differentiations, through the uniqueness of each culture, each society, each individual experiencing existence. So for some, it could be fearful. And this aspect of existence is also it. For some, it's so inviting. It is play. It's a place to test out our strengths and muscles. Nothing to be worried about being hurt or destroyed. It is this incredible interplay of variety, distinctiveness, and so on, at this moment in our journey collectively, is yet to be felt viscerally as the play of existence. It's now felt as an existential danger. It is felt as one to be prepared to defend and to fight and to stand your guard or your whatever. And so there's a real sense in which those who advocate for in many ways earlier, as we were mentioning, aspire for the unity, the oneness, have to sort of at that moment is sort of again loosen and step back to feel there's a kind of therapeutic stance
Yeah.
that's needed to feel. It's no judgment, no assessment of failure, but what are the conditions that make possible this state of consciousness? And so, if we were to sort of work with this variegated levels of consciousness, and earlier I mentioned to you the issue of science and religion will remain a feverish issue at a certain level of consciousness.
Yeah.
The issue of science and religion will be a joyful place to bring together the so-called immediate material, visible force field of existence working with rules, laws, and outcomes and technologies with delicate, invisible workings of a subtle energetic field forces that they can together infuse and help one to manifest and to demonstrate, the other to expand and deepen and go farther and farther. So to come back as an example, I will say to you that the hard understanding of science, that the Newtonian framework
Yeah.
of separate entities called atoms and or of force objects that do things has been loosened by quantum physics and contemporary understanding of matter. So matter now, at the deepest level of understanding, is a field dance that has options to be or not to be, that it comes about to manifest entities in the measurable world after delicate moves that happen between the one who experiments and tests and the field that seems to resonate and respond.
Yeah.
And so if you come to the sciences through that sort of step or understanding, the so-called religious subtle world that you were mentioning earlier, the subjective, the one that responds to ways, are really here. We are saying at deep energy, high energy level, matter is no matter.
No. Wow. Yeah.
So we are in a zone where the so-called material world that is so amenable to science but not so to religion is opened up by the very pushing, by the very dedicated workout of the hard sciences, arriving at a zone where things are indeterminate, where things seem to have multiple options of being, where the local and the farthest are immediately connected in a non-local way, which is really what the religious spaces have been trying to articulate, the kind of delicate energies at work.
Yeah.
Do you see? So I'm bringing to you in the sense that in a certain level of consciousness of science, the spiritual is there. At certain level of consciousness in the religious, crass materialism is there. So it really is a spectrum, and it just depends. At certain moments of one's consciousness, one might be a high materialist, even though one is a spiritual seeker.
Yeah.
And at a certain level, the materialist could be the most spiritual being in his or her attunement. So this is this thing of the consciousness modulation that practice alone can really give us you might say, a science of, meaning a deep sensing of the place of the representation consciousness and understanding of existence. It is only practice that will grant you. For a simple reason, it just like in science, it's only experimentation and or workout, and later having to theorize. And in the same way, in the religious sphere, it is, you might say, the laboratory work of practice.
Yeah. That's a really, really great way of putting it, actually. I'd never. Yeah, I'm still kind of letting all that sink into me.
Surely. There's. It's just really to bring it back to the questions the young ones are asking is a good one. To bring up the question is the same way as to bring up who am I.
Exactly.
So this is now what is knowing. The science and religious question is about, you might say, epistemology, meaning the knowledge of how we know.
Yeah.
Did you see?
Yeah.
And it is part of ontology, which is what is there. Who am I? What is it? So the journey has begun then. So the questioning is a wonderful thing. It's simply the questioning has to be sustained and deepened and explored further. And hopefully the environment within which these people operate would nudge them to keep at it. And this is a little bit earlier what I was saying. Depending on how these questioners are embedded in their environment, and this is a little bit of what you were saying earlier, that they need to be separated to take their steps to be able to doubt. You're mentioning. The hope is these people would bring these questions in such a way that their environment will not hamper them.
Yes.
Do you see? So
Exactly, yeah.
so they will the environment or their culture, their framework, their friends and so on would not think of them as doubting and now becoming heretics or anything. It's just simply they will think of them as furthering the religious quest that is internal to their context, to their world. And hopefully they will be able to do that enough to have the space to keep discovering. So we are back to this skilled way. And in many ways, among all of the people who are here, you nudging them with a few questions separated a few from your collective.
Yeah.
Did you see? But it was a collective. You needed a collective, not just one person.
Yeah.
And that collective allowed you to sense more questions that arise. And you pointed to a kind of one person, me, for example, to start pushing this question. And then out of that conversation, perhaps if they hear it, they will generate, or a few would generate more questions or more issues. And so now we are in that collective journey where I was mentioning to you about, whereby we acknowledge that, yes, these things can be felt separately, given the assumptions, the framework we bring. Yes, they are actually interconnected. There's issues that link them. And then actually, it's not a question about linking or separate or anything. It is this horizon within which they arise. And in fact, they arose because the horizon within which we function is one which is trying to grow.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's wonderful to
Yeah.
be agents of the growth of the horizon, out of which these questions arise, because the horizon wants to be more and more explicit and more felt, maybe even embodied, an ongoing one, not just one Sunday, Friday, No, it is a continuously fecund unfolding. And this is where this adventure is really nudging us, and we are participating in.
Yeah, and but throughout the journey, what's so interesting is like I feel simultaneously like I'm becoming more clear
Yes.
about life,
Yes.
and I'm gaining clarity.
Yes.
At the same time, it seems like life is becoming more complex and more
Yes.
nuanced.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that's why I'm loving the
Yes,
title of
that's
this
right.
book on
That's right.
complexity.
Exactly.
Because it's
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
I'm like,
Exactly.
you know, the deeper I go,
Yes.
the more I see,
Yes.
the more nuanced it becomes. It's kind of like getting a microscope.
Yes.
And I was like,
Exactly.
I thought that was just a blade of grass. And
Yes.
look at all
Exactly.
these little cells
Incredible.
inside of
Yes.
it, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
so I understand people's fear and hesitation.
Yes.
Hence why I think, you know, even though I agree with you that we did create a collective, it's a collective separate from the greater collective.
That's right. That's
This
right.
is something I think very few people can actually go through and
Yes.
process.
Yes.
Because
yes.
it's so strange to bear this much
Yes.
certainty, some
Yes.
uncertainty
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes. There is no belittling of the workout needing.
yeah.
And already, even between our conversations that have arisen, the, the, the workout that's needed to bring about the asking.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see? It
Yeah.
should be the simplest and the most thing.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it needs the kind of workout. And the same thing, the distinguishing, the separating, to be able, as you were saying, to doubt or to question or to raise the issue and to consciously explore it and stay with it and not feel, oh, this is not my belief, it's not, I am being misled and so on, but have the muscles and the gut and the strength and the courage to stay. It's okay. My religion can sustain any
Yeah.
questioning.
Mm.
What would do anything to my little mind bringing this few questions? How would that affect my this incredible attunement to the universe that my religion is? So the confidence that allows the questioning, and the questioning that clarifies the. So this interplay, this back and forth, you might say what they call the coincidence of opposites, or the yin and yang, that is it. And there's no need for us to want to separate. It's just simply, as you were saying earlier, the deeper understanding will give place, and there will be less turmoil inside. There will be a releasedness to allow even greater display.
Yeah.
Not even as it is right now. A greater disagreement and a deeper. Let us play. Let us make it even best. Excellent. How lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Let me pause this. I always greatly appreciate this. I should head to bed as well. I'm gonna stop this here.